On the top story, the shootings in Connecticut. Following the tragedies we've been reporting, President Obama has indicated he may be ready to take on the country's powerful gun lobby. Let's talk to journalist and commentator Beth Gardner, who's in our central London studio. Good morning, Beth. I mean, we need to, cut this back to basics, don't we? Is this a big enough tragedy, a significant enough tragedy, to create a fundamental shift in America's attitude to gun control?
Well, we're going to have to wait and see, really. There's been that kind of speculation after, some previous incidents, and the comments that you alluded to from President Obama suggesting that he wants to take some action are really not that different from comments that he made after the cinema shootings in Colorado, and before that, the attack that targeted the Congresswoman Giffords in Arizona. I think Obama's going to have to make a calculation as to what he thinks he can accomplish here. And I think there's also a big question as to what the gun control advocates are going to do. They've really been, sort of outshouted, if you will, in Washington over the past decade or so by the other side, by the gun rights side. There's been some talk about maybe a march on Washington in favor of gun control. It may take that kind of a thing to put some pressure on the politicians.
There is an important point with that, isn't there? That whatever Obama feels he can do, and let's be honest, he's not got as much to lose now that he's in his second term. Personally, he's not got as much to lose. But this is ultimately going to boil down to public opinion, isn't it?
Yeah, that's right. And public opinion, as I'm sure you know, has really been moving in the opposite direction in recent years. In fact, in states across the country, we've seen an upsurge in laws loosening gun controls, things that, like allowing concealed carry permits to people, allowing guns in schools, nurseries, churches. And we're going to have to wait and see what happens here. Obviously, there's been a tremendous upsurge of revulsion and horror at this carnage in Connecticut. But this is an issue that's got a very, very strong partisan charge, and people are very divided in how they see it. Certainly there's been a large number of people saying, that this shows the dire need, really, for more sensible gun laws. But there's also been a lot of voices on the other side who see it very differently, including yesterday the head of the state legislature in Michigan, who said that if an adult in the school had been carrying a gun, perhaps this tragedy could have been, lessened or stopped before it came to its conclusion. So there are many Americans who see guns as a form of protection, and who don't necessarily see the link between more guns and greater violence. And whether those people
we have to get our head here in the UK, Beth. We need to get our heads round the whole attitude to guns in the United States. We sort of become quite blasé about it. But one thing that struck me from the reports in the immediate aftermath of this was one teacher who saved the lives of her children by putting them in the safe room in the school, an elementary school, a primary school with its own safe room to lock people away in the event of this sort of emergency. That in itself is fairly terrifying. There aren't schools in the UK with their own safe rooms.
Yeah, well, I'm not familiar with that detail myself, but certainly, as you say, it is hard for people in the UK and elsewhere in the world to get their heads around the level of gun violence in America. It's 30,000 deaths a year in the United States caused by guns. As we've seen in recent years, this has become painfully familiar. These massacres seem to follow one on from the next, and one more horrible than the last. As I said, unfortunately, that almost sometimes seems to have an effect of polarizing opinion further. If there's ever an event that seems to have the potential to be a game changer and shake up public opinion, maybe turn the tide on gun control, if the advocates can make a push for it, you would certainly think it's something like this, as horrific as it is, involving so many children.
Yeah, you would imagine so. It could be the trigger. Beth, good to get your views. Thank you. Sport coming up in just a moment.